with that illustration done, let's go ahead now and let's I'm going to open my basic.php page, and see this has a PHP file extension. Okay, and then here we've got echo basic page. It could have been like echo hello. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do file, save as, and we're going to call this, we'll call it test. Well, we'll call it error test or something like that. Okay, and then let's just make this exactly like the other one was. So the other one said hello, and we're going to go ahead and save this, and we can also change this to error test. Okay, and I'm going to close this basic.php page. We'll stick with error test, and now if I go, let's go here and close that, and I'm going to go ahead and look back inside of my dev folder, and here's my error test page. Okay, so here we've got the word hello. It's actually parsing it. My color coding is correct. I've got those bright red tags. Echo is in green. That's normal on Dreamweaver. My string, because it's in quotes, it's a string. It's sort of like a darker red, and my terminator is black, so we're all good here. And it's working. There are no error messages anywhere on the page. All right, so it's handling it properly. And if I go up here to view my source code, then you're going to see something that looks different. See how it's not showing me that PHP? It's because it's actually parsing it, it's digesting it, and it's spitting it back out as digested HTML. Okay, so it's just saying hello. So that's, and you're going to learn in this class that it is incredibly useful, when, especially if you're having any problems and understanding what's going on. It is incredibly useful to always look at your source code to see how it's actually trying to translate what's going on in PHP. What is it actually outputting? That is very, very often the key to figuring out your problems. Not always, but very often. Okay, so let's go back and we're going to do some experimentation and trying to make this thing pull some errors up. Alright, so before we do any error stuff though, real quickly, I want to talk a little bit about whitespace in PHP. You should have a pretty good understanding already about whitespace inside of normal HTML, so let's talk about what happens with whitespace inside of the PHP tags. Alright, so first of all, you notice here that I put like a tab indentation. Totally okay. Anything that is outside of the command, you know, that is an enclosed command, or it would, in some other cases, it would be like curly braces, which we haven't gotten to yet, but anything that is like outside of the command, so before the command, after the command, etc., then whitespace is okay. So I could do this, for instance, and all of this whitespace is totally fine. And it wouldn't matter then if I came down here and said, you know, echo something, okay? And that would completely be acceptable. All this whitespace is fine. Now, what is not fine, okay, would be if I didn't have white space here, right? I have to have that white space there. That's not considered white space, it's considered a space character. Like, I could have done this, echo something. That would be acceptable because I'm just running one command right after terminating another one. That's acceptable. Having no white space here is fine. Doing it this way is also fine. Okay, but what I cannot do is I cannot do that. All right, it wants to see that. Now, I will say there are some installations of PHP where this would be acceptable and it would work. And I just want to go ahead and reiterate that it is a best practice to put a space there. All right, because sometimes it will work and sometimes it will not work. So go ahead and put a space there. So don't, you know, if you get it to work, go, oh, well, she said that, you know, that's not supposed to work. Well, sometimes it doesn't work. It depends on your installation of PHP. All right. Now, another thing that is okay is see how this has a quotation mark set? All right, well, that means that this is a string. Okay, so anything that you see inside of double quotes is going to be a string. Also, anything inside of single quotes, also a string. And we'll get to double and single quotes and the difference between them later. But if I wanted to put hello space, my name is Bob, okay? This space is fine because it is considered a string character. It's part of this larger string. That's fine. And that's not technically considered white space, it's considered a character space. Okay, so it's actually a textual character. This is part of, an area of the command because it is literally inside of a command. So I just wanted to reiterate what is okay white space and what is not okay white space. Later, when we start getting into how to use functions, like for instance, before we did PHP info, okay, we had PHP info, and then I put my parentheses butted right up against the function name PHP info. Something also that's acceptable whenever it comes to functions is you can have one space after the word PHP info or after the function name. That's acceptable. I typically don't do that though. I typically, as my standard practice, keep the function name right up next to a parenthesis. We haven't really talked about functions except for this one yet, so don't worry about this. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that, and let's go ahead and save this. And now this is going to print out just fine to screen, so if you wanted to just double check, I'll refresh it. Hello, my name is Bob. Now let's jump back here and let's start showing you how to throw some different errors. Okay, so syntax is everything. If I forget, for instance, to type that terminator, let's see what happens. I'm going to save this, and I'm going to show you a little trick here, okay? This is really useful to understand later. I hit refresh and it looks fine. Everything's okay. The reason that that's okay is because I only have one single command inside of my PHP tags. It is a best practice to always put your semicolon there as a terminator, always. And the reason that that's a best practice is because, let's say that I do this, okay? And even though technically when you only have one command inside the PHP tags, technically it'll still parse it properly. If I decide later to come and add something like echo, let's say, and I'll put a space there, and I'll say, let's say, and I am 25. Okay, let's say that we do that. Now you see that there's a red spot here on line 12. It's because now it sees that there's a problem. The problem is now I've got more than one command inside my PHP tags. It understands that I didn't have a terminator right there. Okay, so let's go ahead and save that, and let's see what kind of response I get. Alright, well, it's saying, hey, there's a syntax error. It's a parsing error, and it's saying I was expected to see something, and what it's expecting to see is a semicolon. Okay, and it's saying that the error is on line 12. And just so you know, you're not always going to be this lucky where it says, hey, the error's on line 12 and the error's actually on line 12. But one of the things that's useful to know is that if the error is not actually on the line that it says it's on, it's always going to be way before it somewhere. Maybe not way before it, but it's going to be before it somewhere. You're never going to find the error coming after. You're always going to find the error coming before. And the reason is that it was expecting something to happen. So, maybe somewhere up above you didn't close an argument, like you didn't close a curly brace or you didn't close a parenthesis or something like that. And it keeps looking down the page to eventually find the ending of it, and it never finds it. And so it's going to throw the error way down the page where it said, hey, I finally couldn't find it, I give up. Okay, so in this case we're lucky because the error is actually where it says it is. So I'm going to go ahead and put that there, save it, hit the refresh button. Okay, and there we go. Alright, so that's one type of error that you might see. And I want to get rid of this. And let's say that now what we do is let's say we forget to put the ending parenthesis on our string. Well, notice what else happened. My color coding got all wonky. It went awry. Like, I know that the ending body and ending HTML tags should be in this blue color, right? Well, it changed to this dark red. And now we're seeing the error on line 11. Let's go ahead and Save that. Let's refresh it. And it's going to give me this. It's saying unexpected end of file. Okay, something else that you might see instead of the words end of file is you might see dollar symbol and the word end. That dollar symbol end is the same as end of file. That's something that's technical term for literally the end of a file. That's the end of a file. All right, it's the last character in a file. It's saying that I don't expect the file to end yet because I'm expecting to see some kind of argument close. All right, that's what that means. So typically when you see something that's a parsing error that says unexpected end of file, it means that something didn't get closed. Something got started and it was supposed to get closed and it didn't. It's usually going to be something like a quotation mark, or it's going to be a curly brace. It typically isn't going to be a parenthesis. That's usually a different kind of error, but sometimes, depending on what you're doing, it might be. So let's go back here and let's go ahead and put this back. Okay, let's also see what happens if we just somehow forgot to put any of that stuff. It looks very similar. Let's see if it actually throws the same message. We'll save it. Hit refresh, and it does. It's still giving me the same thing because it's still looking for that ending quotation mark. It's not even worried anymore about the terminator because it's got to find the end of the quotation before it can terminate the command. So that gives you some sense of it. Now, let's say that you do have that, but let's say, and you terminate it properly, but let's say that something happens where you make a mistake and you forget the first string, or it gets deleted or something like that. You forget the first string mark, the first quotation mark. Let's go ahead and hit save. Hit refresh. And now it's saying unexpected name. It doesn't understand what hello is. It has no idea. It's saying it's an unexpected name. And so it's thinking that it might be like a constant or something. We haven't really discussed that. But it doesn't know what hello is. And so it doesn't know what to do with it. It just stops right here, right after hello, and it says, I don't get it. Don't know what to do. I'm just not sure. Okay. Another thing that you sometimes might do is, right, we haven't talked about double and single string quote marks yet, but let's say that you mix them and you don't end them properly. So a single quote string should end in a single quote like that, and that would be okay. But let's say that we accidentally mix them and we type a double quote to end a single quote. Let's see what happens. Okay, it's saying, hey, there's an unexpected problem here, and it doesn't understand what it is supposed to be doing. Okay, so I just want to show you these things so that you can start to have an understanding where it's saying in caps and white space, it doesn't understand. This is part of some kind of string issue. It doesn't understand what it's supposed to be doing. It's actually printing the string here, and it's saying, what am I supposed to do with this? I don't get it. I don't know if you noticed, but it didn't always print the string in the other ones. So those might be some clues as to help you figure out what it is that you're supposed to be doing to resolve your error problems. A lot of times students will just see an error problem and they won't even look at what this says, and they'll just freak out, throw up their hands, and they'll send me an email, or they'll go to the discussion board, and without even trying to figure it out, they'll just do this. Well, I need you to understand that that's part of your job, is to sort of make an effort to figure out what some of these things mean. And you're not going to understand exactly what they all mean at the very beginning, but you're going to start to see patterns where if you mistype things enough times, it's going to start to make sense about what the problem is. You'll start to go, oh, okay, I understand. I think that's probably that I'm missing a quotation mark or something like that. And I'm not going to go over some of the other kinds of errors that we're going to get later in the semester, because it's going to have to introduce things that are more complicated. But anyway, that'll get you started on understanding some error stuff. And let's just, so we can end this properly, we'll save this, and let's just go ahead and refresh this. Now we're good. I'm just going to go ahead and end the demo here, so you can move on to get started now.